Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. My name is Adam. It is Misham Frostcolt the Ninth, and today I'm going to give you my review of Amber and Ashes. Now, this is the first novel in the Dark Disciple trilogy, written solely by Margaret Weis. And I think you can really tell the difference between Margaret Weis's writing and Tracy Hickman's writing, and I think that is encapsulated best probably in the last book, Dragons of a Vanished Moon, when Tasselhoff was doing a bunch of sort of silly, ridiculous stuff. You don't get a lot of the silly, ridiculous in this novel, and I kind of like that. This is a much more adult approach to Dragonlance than we've had in the past, again, which I like very much. But again, this is a spoiler review, so if you have not read Amber and Ashes and you do not want to know the story, you need to stop watching the video or maybe read the book and come back and watch it another time. Now, for those of you who may be tuning in live, you're always welcome to send your live comments up in the chat, and I will address them after the review. The way these videos go is I read my pre-written review and then just sort of riff for a little while based on your commentary on the book, some of the ideas that weren't outlined in the review itself, and just have a little bit of fun. That's all this is really about. It's about having a little bit of fun on a Thursday. So let's do it, right? It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. Anyway, this is my perspective only. Again, if you differ from my opinion, that's welcome. Put your thoughts out there. I would love to read them. I'd love to respond to them. This is not a world where I think I know everything. I love to be corrected. I love to have others' opinions on different ideas that I threw out there. Because if I'm being honest, part of what's fun for me is the engagement and the back and forth about these different ideas on Dragonlance, not me just disseminating my own. All right, so that being said, let's dive into the review. Book 1 picks up with Mina and Galdar in the hidden tomb of Takesis. They've stayed there several months. Mina was afraid others would find the tomb and either make light of the body or steal jewelry or artifacts, in other words, desecrate the tomb. In truth, the gods had already hidden the mountain that she laid in, and Galdar is being reminded by Sargonas on a regular basis of his bargain for his life. Galdar is unsuccessful at getting Mina to leave, and when a figure approaches from the distance, he moves to intercept it. It is in fact Chemosh, god of the undead, who is looking for a youthful follower to draw in other youthful worshippers. He's tired of walking around with a bunch of corpses. He's chosen Mina, knowing that she must have something that drew Takesis to her, that he could use or exploit. Chemosh throws Galadar as far as Sylvanesty, where he's met by a party of other Minotaurs searching for him who were sent by Sargonas. Galdar is to be the liaison between the Minotaur and human nations moving forward. This is where the book differs from every other Dragonlance novel. In a really good way. Chemosh seduces Mina, and by the end of book 1 actually has feelings for her. There is more sex in this first book than there was in any of the other trilogies, and I, for one, welcome it. He reveals Mina's hidden self. Since she was washed up on the shores of the Citadel of Light, she has no memory of her past. Then she worshipped Goldmoon and was drawn away by Takesis and worshipped her. Chemosh tells Mina to know herself and think for herself. He doesn't want a mindless follower. He wants an empowered high priestess. Now, this is a new idea to Mina and one that she readily takes to. Because of that, and because of his seduction, she agrees to worship him. Now, in the Age of Mortals, the gods need followers, but the mortals don't need the gods. They have mysticism and sorcery, separate from the gods. So, the gods must then entice and be strategic with their influence. Mina asks for a test to prove her loyalty to Chemosh, and Chemosh tells her to, well, if she needs to prove to him that she is really worthy, as she proved to Takesis before him, how about she go and free the Death Knight Osric Krell, who is being kept on Storm's Keep by Zeboim. Mina agrees and travels to the coast, buys a ship, and sets off to Storm's Keep. Zeboim tries to drown her, and when she comes back up into the boat from falling overboard, Mina sees Zeboim sitting there and tells her that she's going to enact revenge on Osric Krell for killing her son, Erican. You'll remember that Erican Ericus is the demigod, son of Zeboim, the goddess, and Lord Ericus, the Dragon High Lord. And she's doing all of this for Takesis, as she claims. Zeboim doesn't like her mother, Takesis, after she stole the world, and she's actually glad that her mother's dead. But she sees something in Mina, and eventually allows her safe passage to Storm Keep. Little does Mina know that Krell sees her coming, and prepares to capture and torture her for his own amusement, as he's stuck on the island, and as punishment by Zeboim, and all he can really do is wait for people to wash up on the shores and then torture them for fun. Mina arrives and sneaks into the keep through the granary, catching Krell off guard as he starts a game of Kaz. And Mina strikes him with a crowbar, knocking his helmet to the floor. This is our first clue that Mina is more than just an impressionable young woman. One single hit and she took out a Death Knight. Now I have to admit that Osric Krell is the most whiny, worthless, filthy version of a Death Knight after Lord Soth, in comparison. I imagine Death Knights being powerful and bold, but Krell is like whiny and terrified of his own shadow. It's really weird. Anyway, she whips his ass, and a mortal should not be able to do that with a crowbar of all things. Zeboim steps in, not believing that Mina could do such a thing, and sees that there is truly something special about her. Zeboim wants her as a follower now and allows her a reward. Mina chooses Krell's helmet and leaves as fast as she can. When Mina makes landfall on Ansalon, Zeboim goes searching for Krell's soul so that she can pull it back from the abyss and continue tormenting him. But she can't find it. She realizes that Mina took it on behalf of Chemosh, and she is furious. Mina arrives at the temple to Chemosh in a mausoleum, and Chemosh takes Krell's soul, bringing him back to Krynn and takes him on as a servant. As Krell leaves to go wreak havoc on Chemosh, in Chemosh's name, Chemosh and Mina make love, and Chemosh finds himself dumbstruck that he could fall for a mortal. Again, another clue that Mina is more than she appears. Book 2 has Mina arriving in a town called Stoughton for the Spring Dawning Festival. A young cleric of Kiri Jolith saw her entering with 4 large, beautiful women carrying her in a palanquin. The cleric, the man named Lou, was asked to discuss religion by Mina with her, and he didn't want to appear fearful, as he was new in town as well, so he just put her off. And then he was invited again to her room, where she subsequently seduced him and invited him to join her in the worship of Chemosh. Now, Mina has an incredible talent for convincing people to do things. Again, they keep drawing into those amber eyes that you sort of lose yourself in. From the War of Souls, the assumption was that was just because Takesis gave her some sort of ability or power to sort of awe others that look upon her. We find out now that Chemosh is actually losing himself in those amber eyes, and so is every other person she meets. So this is the third clue that there is something different about Mina, and she is not just a young woman. After some discussion and the promise of eternal youth and love, he relents and is actually turned into what's called a beloved of Chemosh. Not quite alive, well, not alive at all, but not undead, but definitely dead, but still walking around as if they were alive. So imagine sort of a vampire without the need to suck blood. That's the beloved of Chemosh. They are kind of immortal, actually. Mina sent him off to turn more souls over to Chemosh. Now, the whole hook here is that they get to enjoy the fleshly life, right? All the wonderful things about life. You eat as much as you want, drink as much as you want, have as much sex as you want, enjoy yourself as much as you want. You'll never age. You'll never grow old. You'll always be beautiful, and you can do anything. So that's the draw. There are drawbacks, which they reveal later. So after Lou was sent off to collect more souls, he was actually seized by his parents and taken to a monastery of Majere to meet his brother, Rise Mason. Now, Rise's dog, Ada, ends up biting Lou on meeting him, sensing something is very wrong with him, and Rise's master says his brother is his own shadow. But he doesn't understand what that means. And to be frank, either does the master. He just sees that he's not quite right. Rise takes him into the field to practice fighting with him, and he sees that his brother has changed from his memory. He's dressed as a priest of Kiri Jolith, but he's not actually acting like one. As Rise meditates before supper, he arrives late to find that his brother has actually poisoned the entire monastery, including his parents. which is messed up. And then he approaches Weis and he's like, you need to die as well. And he tries to kill his brother. His brother fights him off, and Lou flees. Weis then prays to Majere, saying, how could you possibly have let this happen? If you're in the monastery, we're here to worship you. You're supposed to protect us, and you allowed my brother to come in and murder everyone, not trying to do anything to stop him. And Majere is just saying, look, you need to clean up the area and continue your worship of me. And Weis said, no, that's ridiculous. I'm going to go stop my brother. And he just pretty much swears off following Majere, and then calls out to any god who will listen, someone help me avenge my my family in my monastery. And one person did answer, and that was Zeboim. And so she made him a monk, well, a monk of her, of Zeboim. She sends him to a cemetery for assistance, where he meets a kender called Nightshade, who is not like any other kender. He's not particularly good at handling, and so he doesn't do that. He's not really attention deficit disorder like every other kender. He's obsessed with one thing, and that's talking to dead people. Now, he's actually a mystic called a Night Stalker, I believe. And he's talented with communicating with dead, and that's his obsession. So Nightshade can talk to the dead, and together they travel to Haven and then to Solace in search of Lou. Now, Solace is now a veritable metropolis. It has grown exponentially since the end of the War of Souls, and certainly since we last saw it at the very beginning of the War of Souls. They meet Gerard, remember him, Knight of Solamnia from the War of Souls. He is now a sheriff in Solace and eat at the much expanded Inn of the Last Home, which now actually spreads across multiple Valenwood trees. Weis leaves to the worship alley of Solace to investigate Chemosh's temple, and then visits an inn in the outskirts of town where he finds his brother, who doesn't even recognize him. And here we are introduced to the drawbacks of being a beloved of Chemosh. You forget, well, one of the drawbacks is you forget where you come from. You become obsessed, very zombie-like, with turning others rather than enjoying the fruits of your immortality. And so you're granted all this wonderful stuff, but the drawbacks are you kind of forget about all that stuff. You know, so Lou is like consuming a bunch of food, but it doesn't satiate his hunger. He drinks a bunch of drink, but it doesn't actually quench his thirst. And so no matter what you do, you're sort of driven to do more, very, again, zombie-like. It's like a mix between Death Becomes Her. You ever saw that film from the 80s? Which is great. Bruce Willis. I guess just a zombie. That's pretty much it. The reason why I always go back to the vampire is because it's very sexy. There's nothing sexy about a rotting corpse of a zombie, and the beloved are supposed to be wildly sexy. And some of the scenes where they're seducing other people is pretty damn sexy. So it is more vampire in the sexiness department, more zombie in the obsessed about turning department. Okay, so they realize that his brother has turned many young women already, who in turn are turning many young men, and the beloved are nearly unstoppable. So the gravity of Chemosh's plan is finally realized. Book 3 concludes this story, revealing a part of Chemosh's plans. He sends the Death Knight Osric Krell back to Storm's Keep, but with Erican's soul in the form of a Kazgame piece. He threatens Zeboim that if she interferes with anything Chemosh is doing, he will send her son's soul to oblivion. Zeboim, terrified about the threat to her son, goes into hiding. She appears in the newly built Solace jail and asks for Weis. Gerard ends up finding him and bringing him to the cell, not knowing that it's Zeboim, and she tells him to collect her son's soul on her behalf. They come up with the plan to shrink Nightshade, the little kender, down to a 3-inch pawn height for the Kaz board game. And while he's on the Kaz board, he's supposed to be locating Erican's soul. Now, again, because he is able to speak to the dead and sense the dead, he can see whether someone's alive or dead. He sees like their life aura about them. And so the whole point of him going is just to find Erican, get the piece, tell Weis so that he can grab it and run as fast as they can, presumably. Hopefully, Zeboim is supposed to teleport them off of Stormkeep once they have the pawn. All right, so Zeboim teleports them to Storm's Keep, and Krell forces Weis to play the board game of Kaz. Now, the downside of playing Kaz with Krell is that if you take a piece, or if you lose a piece to him, he breaks a bone of your body. And he'll just wait there if you pass out until you wake up again and then do your next move. And if he gets another piece, he breaks another bone. And this is his enjoyment. This is how he passes the time. And he's like, I can keep you alive for 25 days just on your bones and your feet alone. So don't worry, we're going to have some fun. I mean, that's pretty torturous, right? That's a scary thing. It's weird because Osric Krell, when he's talking to mortals, he's this super powerful, terrifying character. But we get to hear inside of his head and we get to see how he reacts to the gods. And he's just like a little whimpering child. He's just terrified, like an abused animal. He's just always fearful and, jumping around. And I get that the gods are all powerful and stuff. Lord Soth never did any of that. And Takhisis was constantly bugging him. I don't know. I think if you're a Death Knight, you need to grow up, I guess. I don't know. Hey, Silverwolf, thanks for joining live. If you've never read this, I don't want to spoil anything for you. I've already spoiled everything for you if you've been watching. But I do suggest you read it because it is really good. Okay. Let's see. What they find out is that Ariken doesn't actually want to leave. He wants to stay on Storm's Keep until he can find a way to get his soul free and then torture Osric Krell. He wants revenge. He doesn't want freedom. And so what ends up happening is Nightshade, the Kender, charges his... it's the Knight pawn. He charges the Knight pawn as himself, which is supposed to be the Kender pawn, knocks him off the board, and Ryze grabs them both up and takes his staff, which is called an Emide, and it's like a holy artifact of Majere, or Majere, as the god is supposed to be recalled. And then he hits Lord Krell with the staff. The staff turns into a giant praying mantis and clamps its claws, its mouth, on Lord Osric Krell's head. And the Death Knight starts squealing and screaming like a little baby, like, ah, get it off! Freaking out that this big bug, because I guess he had this, he was just terrified of bugs in his life. And so in his undeath, I guess he still has that same fear. And so he's like punching and trying to pull his knife and sword out to hack off this avatar of Majere, that's attacking him and like sucking his soul out of his head. Very, very funny scene. And I was laughing my ass off through the entirety of it. Ryze is escaping with the pieces. Krell is shouting to Zeboim that Ryze doesn't actually have the right piece in order to convince her not to help him, even though he actually does have the right piece. And Ryze is shouting at the same time, no, I do have it. So they're running through Storm's Keep courtyard, and Ryze is like, I've got it, Zeboim, help me. What are you doing? And Krell's like, he does not. You interfere and you're going to pay. He doesn't even have the piece. I still have it. And Zeboim's like, I don't know what to do. So she's throwing lightning bolts across clouds, hitting the tower with it. She's throwing hail and sleet in Ryze's face to try to stop him from getting away on the off chance that he doesn't have her son's soul. And Ryze gets to a point where it's like, if you're not going to help me, I'm going to die. So I'm just going to jump off the cliff into the water and hope either you save me or I can just swim away. And so he has the pawn, he has the Kender in his little pouch, because again, it's still only 3 inches high, and he runs and he jumps off the edge of Storm's Keep, just flies down, and that's all we hear from him in this book. Then we're back. No, Krell was garbage. So then we flash over to Chemosh and Mina. Chemosh sees Mina turning another guy into a beloved of Chemosh, and he's getting really jealous at this point. He's like, I don't want you to do that anymore. You're going to be my high priestess. You have them turn everyone. You are mine. You and I are the only two that are going to be together. I don't want you being with anyone else. And she's like, look, I'm just doing this because that's how you wanted me to. You told me to. So if you don't want me to anymore, that's cool too. So now that he has Zeboim on her heels and not messing with him at all, his whole plan is to go down into the Blood Sea, which again now is calm, and go to the remains of the Tower of High Sorcery of Istar, which is, again, supposed to be all crumbled up underneath this big mountain that made the Blood Sea out of Istar. And what happened was, during the Lost Battles, once the wizards abandoned the Istar Tower, the King Priest turned it over into a sort of holy relic storeroom, essentially. So every wizard or priest or warrior that collected any holy artifacts of the gods, they brought them to the king priest to be in his good graces, and the king priest then locked them away in the tower. Well, as soon as the mountain fell, everyone just assumed those holy relics were destroyed. But if we remember about the Fifth Age, a lot of the dormant power, people were using it and drawing it out from these magic items and holy relics. And so you had dragon overlords vying for different holy relics, trying to get the power out of them. Chemosh is no different. Now, magic is back, but you got to remember, in the Fifth Age, the cycle of magic and empowering of the gods is a reciprocal cycle. So mortals give power to the gods then feed that power back to the mortals. If you don't have people worshiping you, you're not as powerful. And this is the struggle of the gods in the Fifth Age. So Chemosh is trying to get these holy artifacts for some purpose. I'm guessing it's because he wants to get the power out of it and then use the artifacts to then back up his newly found army of the dead, the beloved of Chemosh, that are really just sweeping across Ansalon at this point. But he needs to get down to the destroyed tower first. So he takes the breath out of Mina, basically granting her the ability to breathe water, but it also means that she'll suffocate if she's in air. And so he does that, and together they go down into the Blood Sea. And as soon as they get down to where the ruins of the tower should be, they realize that the tower has actually been rebuilt, like completely. But there's no doorway because half of the tower is still underneath like rubble and rock and stuff. And so it's only the top half of the tower that's revealed to be pristine and brand new. So Chemosh enters it and starts searching around, seeing if he could figure out, one, who the hell rebuilt this tower, and two, if he could find his relics. Meanwhile, Mina's just sitting there in the ocean, all alone and vulnerable. So she starts seeing these sparkly lights off to the side, and she goes to investigate. And what it is there are two black-robed wizards within the tower who are sort of managing it and doing the upkeep and cleaning it up. And they use this net with lights on it in order to attract tuna. And then the net captures the tuna and brings it in so they can eat. Well, this time it captured a Mina. And so as soon as Mina comes in, they're draining the chamber and she starts suffocating. And they're like, wow, she really does breathe water and she doesn't breathe air. And then we flash back over to Chemosh, who is approached by Nuitari, the black god of the black magic of the Order of High Sorcery, the Black Robes. And he's like, what are you doing in my tower? And Chemosh is like, what are you doing with this tower? How come no one knows this tower exists? And so Chemosh is telling him, look, if you don't want me to tell every one of the gods about this secret place that you've rebuilt, you need to give me my damn artifacts. And Nuitari is not going to give anything up. He's like, look, I don't know what you're talking about. All I know is that you have someone that you brought down here with you who's currently dying. And so Chemosh is acting like he doesn't care because he doesn't want to show weakness, that he actually loves and cares for Mina. He's like, look, I don't care if you kill her. I don't care if she dies in here. And Nuitari's like, okay then. And then just like crushes her. And so inside, Chemosh is just like, oh no. And so he does what any god would do. He can't bluff anymore. He has to leave. And so he travels out of the tower thinking that Mina's dead, and he's going to the places in the afterlife to where the souls are going to be, sort of passing through so they can pass through the next part of existence, whatever that is. And she's not there. And so he patiently waits in the realm of the dead to see her spirit come. And as soon as she does, he breaks down. He turns away from her and he starts bawling. He is in love with this woman, and this mortal is now dead and he is destroyed. A god is doing this. For a mortal, there's something we're not knowing about Mina. There's some power that she has that we're not revealing yet. So that is like, I think, the fourth or fifth clue by now. Okay, that being said, it flashes back to Nuitari, who goes to his two black robes, and they're like, well, he believed the illusion, and Mina is just alive. She's just trapped in the room. And they're like, okay, well, you need to continue studying her and keep that illusion on Chemosh, because he wants to believe that she's dead because he loved her so much and he saw me crush her. And that way we'll control Chemosh from telling everyone else about my tower, and I can continue trying to make this the magical realm of the dark robes that is impregnable for anyone else to come and try to get into. And that's the end of the book. We end with Mina supposedly dying, Rise jumping off a cliff at Storm's Keep. Who knows if he's going to live or die. You've got Krell, who is, again, trapped on Storm's Keep, and Zeboim might be there to torture him again. We have the beloved of Chemosh running all across Ansalon, turning people into more beloved and exponentially growing their numbers, and they begin to turn east to where, well, ostensibly the coast of the Blood Sea, where we find out in the next book that Chemosh actually built a keep there. So he's building his army, even though he no longer has a high priestess to run it, and he is just sort of decimated. All right, so that's the actual story. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes trying to catch up because I just sort of freeballed that whole thing. This is a great beginning to this trilogy, and I'm very excited to revisit where it goes in subsequent novels. It paints the Fifth Age as a place of possibility rather than defeat, as it was under the Dragon Overlords. It adds sensuality with the beloved, Mina, and Chemosh's interactions, and honestly, it's my favorite Fifth Age book yet. Till I read the next one. That's how I roll. All right, if you like Dragonlance, Mina, or the Fifth Age, this book is a must. If you just like vampire-esque mysteries, you may want to check this book out. And if you are obsessed with Margaret Weis's writing, Dragonlance, you should do yourself a favor and read this book. What's the deal with Majere? Well, Majere believes in peaceful contemplation. That's the whole point of the god, right? And so Rise, as a monk of Majere, that's all he's supposed to do. And so when faced with the choice of continuing peaceful worship for enlightenment or going off and seeking vengeance, he leaves the god. But the god still knows who Rise Mason is in his soul, in his heart. And so he embodies an essence of himself within this Emide. The Emide is it's the holy relic, but what it is basically like a 9-foot-long staff that the monks train in fighting with. But it's just this knotty wood staff. And he has Rise's dog, Ada, bring it to him on the road because he left it behind, like, I'm no longer with you as a god, so I'm going to leave your holy artifact here in your monastery. So Majere is still helping and supporting Rise. Rise doesn't realize it until the second book, but he's there the whole time. I mean, as soon as he saw that the Emide turn into that giant praying mantis and start biting Krell's head, I don't know why I find that so funny. He was like, oh shit, the god is with me. Like, he still cares for me, even though I've sworn to help Zeboim, and Zeboim's helping me and, doing everything, she can to make sure I find Mina and I stop my brother. Still, he's with me. Or she, or it, or whatever Majere is. You enjoyed the exploration and depth given to the other gods. It was a relief not to have the Paladine Dark Queen again and again. I agree totally. I think they had an opportunity to include even more, and they didn't. It might have gotten convoluted, so maybe that was a good thing. But their exploration of Majere, their exploration of Zeboim, Sargonis gets a good, some healthy nods in this novel. And he is really taking over Takhisis' position as the dominant god over all of the other evil gods. Because ultimately, he's moved all of his Minotaurs from the Blood Sea. I mean, they still hold the territory, but he's colonized Sylvanesti and he's moving more and more troops down there. And he's smart because he's not just going to take over the area through force. He's sent emissaries out to the ogre nations, and now the ogres are sort of in line working with the Minotaur race and under Sargonis' rule. He's sending emissaries, Galadar, out to talk to the human nations to see if there's anyone willing to work with him, which I'm sure he's going to find some in Kerr. So ultimately, he's amassing a force that they don't, as far as I know, in any of the books, they haven't really explored what Sargonis does with this massive force, but it terrifies the other gods because Chemosh wants to be the one in charge, but he doesn't have the army, and the dead are just not really that effective. So that's why he creates these beloved of Chemosh, so he can have a military force to claim territory first, very much like a chess game. This entire trilogy is very much based around the idea of Kaz, which is the chess game. Let's see. You mean we got some of the other gods in the other books, but not generally? Yeah. I mean, they really shit the bed on trying to detail any of the other gods. It's like Mishakal or Paladine, and then Gillian, and then to Kiesis, and that was kind of it. You get these like throwaway lines of sailors talking about Zeboim, or maybe Habakkuk, who's sort of the fish or sea life god. But that's kind of it. And the truth is, we have this rich pantheon of deities that they could explore and use in a very interesting, manipulative ways, and yet we don't really get a lot of it. Let's see. Do you guys know of a book where it goes from this point forward with the Minotaur Nation and conquering any lands or anything? I stopped reading Dragonlance novels after the Taladas trilogy, which is also during the Fifth Age, but again, it's set in Taladas, and so it has nothing to do with Ansalon at all. So if you guys know of any, let me know. I know there's like Goblin Nation trilogies, there's Ogre trilogies. I read the Elven Exiles trilogy, but that didn't really deal with anything except for just the elves. And then only the fraction of the elves that were going through Kerr with Gilthaz. So I'm very interested in developing out this Dragonlance age that I don't think they're going to. I don't think Wizards of the Coast really cares. They're going to throw us a bone with this new trilogy, but that's kind of it. I think the campaign source book that they're going to be releasing next year, rumored to be releasing next year, is going to be War of the Lance Era, to coincide with the new trilogy, which is War of the Lance Era. So I think we may just sort of be left open. Now, it's a good and bad thing, right? Because if you role play in this era, you can pretty much do whatever you want, and it's not going to be conflicted by a novel. But it also means that there's no like canonical timeline after this point. And I kind of liked it. I enjoyed, reading the timeline evolution. So it's a bit of, yeah. And they do mention Portheos, and I can't remember, like he wanted to reclaim Quilinisty, because he was absent throughout the entire War of the Souls. So I think it was like this. They played him like this mysterious elf, like maybe it was him, maybe it wasn't. And then I think in the third book, they outright said it was him. I can't remember that well. So the Goblin Nation wasn't Minotaurs. You read the Ogre one too and don't recall much about the Minotaur. All right, well, what are you going to do? Maybe they didn't explore it anymore. It's definitely a place worthy of exploration, I think. Thanks for joining, Trees90. I didn't mention it earlier. That's kind of all I had for this episode. I just wanted to sort of gush over this novel, which I truly do love. I think it's so good. And it's not explicit sexually at all. It's age appropriate to like 15-year-olds, I think, or, maybe even younger. But it does have suggestions, which is, we get tiny little smatterings here and there. When we had, who was it? Was it Portheos looking at Silvara in Southern Ergoth when she was taking washing herself? That was kind of sexy a little bit, but it wasn't really anything. You get some really sort of ham hockey shit with Karaman, sort of lusting after Tika. You get the suggestion of something between Tanis and Kitiara when they actually did sleep together, but it was never really written out in any, I don't know, descriptive or adult way. So anyway, I love that. I love being able to see Dragonlance grow and, and speak to an older audience, a more mature audience, because again, this is Margaret Weis in her final Dragonlance trilogy up until these new ones that just are going to be coming out next year. And so I think she did really kind of want to take this character that she helped create, Mina, and create something new and different and maybe try some things out and see if people responded. And I think people really did. I know Mina is a very polarizing character for a lot of people. There are some people who just don't like her at all. I think it's brilliant the way they addressed her and the trajectory she ended up taking as a character, which we'll be exploring further. But again, these books are not very long. They're just over 300 pages, like 320 pages or something each. So I should next week have the next book as a review ready for you guys. I just started it yesterday though, so I don't know, maybe it'll be next Friday or something. But you can expect those. And yeah, you're like, oh my gosh. When they were describing the four women carrying Mina in her palanquin, And she was saying, she was like, they were wearing sheer black clothing that you could see the form, like the hint of the form underneath as it flowed with the wind. Like, my adult imagination is pretty vivid, and so I'm seeing exactly what she's suggesting we're seeing, and it's awesome. And the way they describe Mina, 'cause she's not a little girl anymore, she's a young woman at this point. And they describe her straight up as this sexy, seductive woman who is empowered and knows exactly what she wants. And that's awesome. I think that is a wonderful place for a female character to be in. And that is owning her own sense of sexuality and purpose. You know, I mean, she is truly empowered. She was a slave under Takesis. Chemosh doesn't want a slave. He wants a strong woman, and she steps up to the plate in a big way. And it's really cool because all the other gods start seeing her and being like, whoa, who are you? Why? What? You know, at first everyone's dismissive of her. Like, yeah, it's just another mortal. How could a god fall in love with a mortal? And then they meet her and see what she's capable of. And they're like, oh, I got to bring her onto my side, onto my team. There's something special about her. I can't wait because I know where it's headed and it's good. It's fun. I think so anyway. You like Mina a lot better in this trilogy. Couldn't stand her in the War of Souls. Yeah, she was a slave. And so she was very Joan of Arc-y, and it was great for Joan of Arc. We don't need another one. I don't know. That's my opinion. All right. That's it for my review of Amber and Ashes by Margaret Weis. What do you guys think of Mina in this new trilogy thus far? Do you like the beloved of Chemosh? And would you use the Tower of the Blood Sea in your game sessions? Feel free to email me at dlsaga@pm.me or leave a comment below. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you're chiming in the chat live, you guys are the best. I really appreciate that. It makes this a lot more fun for me. I'd like to once again invite you to consider becoming a member of this YouTube channel if you're not already a member, and remind you that you can always pick up DragonLance gaming materials using my affiliate link in the description below. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the DragonLance Saga, and thank you for joining me in the celebration. My name's Adam. This has been DragonLance Saga. Until next time, Slanjavar.